Welcome to SLR's course pack on the Code of Civil Procedure, better known as the CPC. In this module, I will introduce you to the CPC. When you hear the words civil procedure, what comes to mind? For many people, it's that it is the toughest subject on the law school syllabus, and I would have to agree with you. The Code of Civil Procedure came into force with effect from 1st January 1909, and the CPC regulates the procedure to be followed by the civil courts. The Code of Civil Procedure is an act to consolidate and amend the laws relating to the procedure of the courts of civil judicature. Yes, the CPC deals with substantive rights, but as the preamble states, its object is essentially to consolidate the law relating to civil procedure. What does that mean? The CPC is procedural, not substantive, right? Let's take the example of crime. The Indian Penal Code is a substantive piece of legislation. The Code of Criminal Procedure is a procedural piece of legislation. Similarly, the Code of Civil Procedure is procedural, and let us say something like the Indian Contract Act 1872 contains substantive rights. What does that mean? In a suit for breach of contract, the procedure to be followed is contained in the Code of Civil Procedure, and the actual cause of action, the substantive elements for breach of contract, are contained in the Indian Contract Act 1872. That is the difference between substantive law and procedural law. Now, what is the scope of the CPC? Well, the CPC is not exhaustive. So, the code is by no means exhaustive, but where the code deals expressly with a particular matter, the provision should normally be regarded as exhaustive. Therefore, if the code defines what a decree is, then that definition of what a decree is in the CPC is considered exhaustive. Now, what is the scheme of the CPC? Well, the code comprises of two parts. First, it comprises of sections, and second, it consists of the first schedule. The first schedule contains orders and rules. The sections are fundamental and can only be amended by an act of parliament. Orders and rules are amended by the respective high courts, basically. Now, the question that comes to mind is, okay, now you have orders and sections that can be amended by the high courts, and you have orders and rules that can be amended by the high courts, I beg your pardon, and you have sections that can only be amended by parliament. So which takes precedence is probably a question you're asking. Well, first of all, the rules made by a high court become part of the code for all purposes. So what does that mean? If the Karnataka High Court amends a particular order and a rule, that amendment in the state of Karnataka becomes a part of the CPC for all intents and purposes, right? Now, Section 2, Subsection 1, which is the definition clause of the CPC, which we will come to shortly, states that code, the word code, includes rules, sections, orders, right? Therefore, orders and rules must be harmoniously construed with sections. Nevertheless, and this is very important for you to understand, sections will prevail over orders and rules in a case of conflict, right? Let me repeat that. Sections, which can only be amended by parliament, will prevail over orders and rules in a case of conflict. So let's go back to our example of the Karnataka High Court. Let's say the Karnataka High Court amends the orders and rules in such a manner that they're in direct conflict with a section in the CPC. Now, the section can only be amended by parliament, which means when parliament amends a particular section in the CPC, for example, let us take the Amendment Act of 1976, one of the most significant amendments of the CPC, the sections will be uniform and apply uniformly throughout the territory of India. The problem is you have different high courts amending orders and rules to suit the local conditions in that high court. Now, what if they're in conflict with the sections? Well, the CPC is very clear on that. It says the sections will always prevail over orders and rules in a case of conflict. This is a golden rule that you should remember when you're in practice, right? Now,